Hi, welcome back. So once again, within the desert, yet another item has just gone missing and vanished. We've seen it previously, such as the crystal skull and other stuff. As of recent time, when Scott Nuttall went out 25th of February, one of the key locations which has been previously visited, there has been changes to the environment. But what caused it? Who was responsible? Let me share with you the footage now and we'll get into it.
Trying to get my foot over the tree. Yep, somebody took it. It's right there.
So, some of you might be wondering, is this really the same location? Because it kind of looks different, and so does the camera angle. Well, I'm going to explain it to you right now. This is the correct location of where the sword and tent originally was. And as you can see, there is no tent in sight whatsoever. As for the sword, Scott Nuttall did take it with him when he previously visited, okay? So that's confirmed. Just a few quick details, okay? I just want to highlight some areas so you can use them to compare when I present to you previous pictures of the same location, okay? From a different angle. So, you've got these logs, okay? Scattered on the floor, just near the opening. Make sure to look out for them. As well, the opening to the rock formation, like that, almost like a V-shaped in a sense. And as well, there's a dead end at the back. Okay. And then the final bit, where the tent originally was, is located near that shadow, that triangular shadow, where the rocks are just above it. Okay. So, with that in mind, okay, just give me a second. Let's move on to the next screenshot of the original hike. That's what it looked like. So you might be able to see the similarities, such as, remember those logs there on his latest hike? Well, those logs are exactly there on the ground near the opening, okay? And as you can see, they've not been moved from the looks of it. So that's interesting. Now, as I said, the opening, kind of like a V, depending what angle you look at it from, okay? And then in there, you can kind of make out the tent, the material, and that's towards the opening of it, which would be exactly there or so, okay? So, let's just move on a bit. Now, this is another screenshot of his old hike, and this can explain the angle, the shot, when he was recording. So, where Scott was located was actually a bit higher up. So if I can get a marker on it, give me a second. He was up there, okay? On that rock. Do you know, on that ledge up there? He was stood up there and looking down at there. Shame the paintbrush isn't thicker. I wonder if that one is. That's better. So he was up there on the rock and he was looking down like that. That should make sense. Let me just save that for a second. So you look at that image and you compare it to that image, looking down, straight down. So hopefully that clears that up, okay? And as you can see on this image of the latest hike, you see the dead end, which is around this area. So it kind of goes in like that. So hopefully that explained it and you're familiar with the area. I just wanted to do like a compare contrast of old and new footage so you get an understanding of the different perspectives and angles of the location and what was originally there compared to what is no longer there, okay? So with all that in mind, the main question we need to ask now is, where is the tent? What happened? What caused it to go? Now, Scott Nuttall mentioned it briefly in his video, and really they're the two reasons that make sense. It was either the weather or a person that took it. We'll get into the person shortly because it is kind of interesting, that one, and I've got some additional points to add on. But if we're starting off with the weather, could it have been the wind? Could it have been wear and tear? Possibly. If we start off with wear and tear, the material of the tent, yes, it can break down, it can disintegrate because of the material, but you know, you would have seen the remains of the tent still, such as the beams, the rods that go and are inserted into the tent, the support to hold it up, that would have remained there. But as Scott Nuttall said, nothing was there whatsoever. And as you saw in the picture, nothing was there. So it couldn't have been wear and tear because you would have still seen remains, okay? So moving on to the wind. Could wind have caused it to just blow away? You know, if you've got bad weather at the time, it could have just blown out and gone off into the distance. Well, we just need to come to some kind of understanding, okay? Because the actual area it's located in, there's a dead end, okay? It goes in and then there's a dead end. So depending on what direction the wind is blowing from, is it blowing from back there? It's not going to catch it because it drops down into a gully. So the tent is probably secure. Comes from the side, same exact story. But if it comes from the entrance point, it could blow it, cause it to, blow to the back of the wall, and then, upward wind could push it up and then it flies into the air and then goes off into that distance. Possible, because like with the storms in the UK in recent time, you had wheelie bins, you had trampolines flying in the air. So it's something like that, which is probably weighs, a lot heavier. And I'm sure like a little tent would probably easily blow off elsewhere. But it's just trying to understand the direction of the wind, the direction of where the tent could have possibly blown to. And the fact that it's not just in an open space, is it? It's in an enclosed space. So does that increase the velocity? Does it increase the intensity of the wind? I don't know, because sometimes if you're in an open space like a field, it can be very windy and noisy, and as you've seen in Scott Nuttall's videos. But if you're in an enclosed space, like a passageway, a pathway, all enclosed, it becomes like a wind tunnel. All the wind is focused in that area. So it's, you feel it's more forceful, more of an impact. Yes, because you might have seen in one of my videos recently when you had the weather the way it was, and it was quite intense, much more focused in a smaller area. So you apply that to the location of the rocks in Scott's video and the tent. Could it have protected it from the wind, or did it cause it to be more exposed in a concentrated way? You try and understand what I'm getting at, okay? I'm not an expert in weather, don't really know fuck all, but just trying to use common sense, okay? So with that in mind, yes, could be the wind, could go anywhere. But when looking at the distance as Scott pans around, you can't really see anything. The amount of rocks, mountains and hills around the area, you might have seen it caught on the side of somewhere else, elsewhere, pressed up against it, but you couldn't. So where did it go? How far did it go? That's the question, isn't it? Now, the only other question we've got to ask, and it's not going to be answered, okay, but it's still worth questioning. The tent, where it originally was against the rocks in that gully, was it originally placed there when whoever, whatever camped out in that spot? Or were they camping out further back elsewhere, and then for whatever reason, they left a tent, there was wind, there was a storm, caused it to blow, it tumbled along and ended up going into that gully and then catching against a rock, and that's where it remained till the day Scott Nuttall, visited there for the first time. Possibility. That could explain why it's all torn and shredded, damaged, because it wasn't all down to the weather and it was down to the wind. If it's blowing around the tent, bashing against rocks, it's going to get shredded to pieces. That would make sense. And if that was the causation for where it ended up, it could be the causation for, where it ended up next, which was elsewhere, why it was missing, okay, in the original area. So that would explain that. But, we don't know for certain where the tent originally was, if it was remaining in that area or if it was elsewhere. So you can't be for definite, can you? Now, we need to move on to a possible person that might have moved it, another hiker, but who? Why would they do that? Well, I mean, someone could have took it for a memento, a collectible, whilst they were out there at some point. Or maybe it was done to add more to the mystery. You know, if we've got the skull, if we've got a missing, well, rock on the supposed covered cave, and some other things along the way, it's like, well, maybe it's been done on purpose. It does make you think, though, if that was ever the case, is it all by the same person or group, or is it just random people every so often? You know, it's just trying to understand, fucking shoulder clip them. It's just trying to understand if we're talking about a person taking the tent, what Scott found back then. In the sense of the video being public, what Scott did, yes, people could have saw it, seen the location, looked at one of my videos and thought, right, I'm going to go there, now I'm going to take it. It could happen, but, you know, why go such length and distance just to get a tent, a bit of material, in hopes that another hiker will, or a previous hiker will return to that exact spot? That's one way of potentially ruling it out, debunking it. But you never know. Strange things can happen, obviously. And, you know, you've always got to take this into account, although it's kind of different. Not to do with people going out there, but coming to me, like reaching out to me, you know, the resistance, the very weird, you know, behaviour by some. Sure, you can write all that off, oh, they're just trolls, they're this and that, but still, they went to some level of depth, some level of detail, or time wasted to write up something and then send it to me. You know, that massive email. I mean, that's the longest email I've ever received. Even people I know or have known very well haven't written anything that long before. So for a stranger to, you know, put that much time in typing it all up, unless they copy and pasted it elsewhere, then that could explain that. But we just ignored that, okay? It's like, well, if people are willing to go to that length, then I'm sure people are willing to go to other lengths as well. And when it comes to the mystery, or when it comes to any kind of thing in life, if there are people that don't want something to be solved, they will go to great lengths to cover it up, to hide it, even if it does mean going to the extreme. It can happen. Just trying to think of anything else. Is there any suspects, any people we know of who could be responsible? Well, let's talk about Really Robin just for a brief second. And I'm going to refer to Really Robin as a human. Yes, it's still most likely a human behind that account, behind that screen. I'm not saying that it is Robin, because it has been confirmed recently by certain people that this account is fake. But at the end of the day, there is some human, some person behind that account, behind the screen, that said what they said. Does it mean what they say is completely fake? No, because this is what you got to add in. There's been times where people have pretended to be somebody else and then actually take action in a certain way. So, such as when people have created fake accounts of myself using similar profile picture, or, you know, profile picture of myself, similar username or just about the same, and then they've acted upon it by leaving comments elsewhere saying negative stuff to make it seem like it's coming from me, it's me, so it gives me a bad name. So if people act out in that way, then it's still possible that that fake account of Robin, what they're saying, some of it could be true, or what they're saying, some of it they are going to do, but not for the same exact reasons as what they're describing. Does that make sense? Not saying that's always 100% true, but it's possible. But I think we can rule that one out, because we've got to be real here. I've got to try and use my memory as well, because I'm not looking at anything. Just got to use my memory. I did get an email from that supposed Robin account 25th of February. And he said, past midnight, the next day after, I'm going to head out. And 9 days later, no reply, then it's game over, something bad's happened. We can get more into that in a different video, okay? I can show you screenshots and everything, but for now, that was basically what was said. So, Interesting, because he sent me that email on the 25th, when on the 25th, that's when Scott Nuttall said he went out on his hike. So, really, if Robin hasn't been out since, no, if Robin wasn't out on the 25th because it was said that he was going out the next day after the 26th, then it would mean Scott's already been there, the tent's already gone, so it couldn't have been that fake Robin that went out to take it. So it must have been somebody else, some stranger. And I know people can say, yeah, but who else is there really? So it must be just natural. But then again, look at the mine shaft. We had no idea who was responsible for that. Yes, people did say, oh, lots of people go there. Technically not lots, but some people have. And then we found out a completely different set, different type, different group of people that did go out. And we only found out when it was much later on. Just like with the covered cave, maybe we might find out about that at some point. Oh, low battery, shit. So with all that in mind, it's like, at least there's only 2 ideas to work from regarding this. We're not branching off. We're not going off all angles. It's not a diversion tactic. It's just a thing along the way, because unless there is important stuff going on, you know, like key findings, like right now, really impactful stuff, and then you had these little tiny mysteries and odd occurrences going on in the background, and you focused all on that and not on what's currently going on, then yes, that's like a diversion and that's a distraction from the real important stuff. But if at a certain point in time there isn't too much important stuff to cover, or it's not been revealed yet, and it's like, well, what do you do in between? You just stop completely? If you stop completely, it would only make sense to do so when there's literally nothing at all, nothing whatsoever going on, nothing has been found, there's just empty. Or you've got to retreat, you've got to pull back, okay? There are really 2 reasons what would make sense, but there is still little things to look at, such as this with the tent. Why not? Because sometimes it doesn't always have to be 100% solved, helpful, maximize everything. Sometimes it might bring more people in along the way, more important people who can get the job done or who do know stuff. So sometimes noise is important in itself. It stops things from dying. I would know about that because I'm the catalyst at times, you know, in regards to other stuff, etc. So yeah, that concludes that. I don't know if I talk too much, but one of those videos, one of those kind of messy videos where you've only got so much to work with, to talk about. Like, if it maybe went unnoticed, or there was another thing missing nearby, or there's a bit more to it, I could, but I just wanted to give the explanation of the location, at least, the tent, the sword, because it was filmed from a different angle, so it could have confused a few people. But you can tell me what you think down below, what you think the theory is. I'll give you my quick opinion right now, you know, because I don't often do it. What I'd say, with taking everything into mind, because of the Robin situation and the dates, you know, being after Scott going, rules it out. So I'd say it probably is weather that caused it, but most likely wind, not, you know, it being worn down, breaking down. It's blown away somewhere. The question is where. But you see what you mean? When that stuff happens, it's kind of like erasing the evidence, isn't it? And it makes you think, how much more was missed? How many more items that could have been around and didn't go anywhere? Does make you wonder, doesn't it? Could there be something else out there? Another item, something important which has just blown away or been washed down somewhere, disintegrated? Makes you wonder, doesn't it? Anything else? Well, what about those underpants at the time? Like, how long were they there for? Wouldn't the wind blown away the briefs at some point? You know, because they are quite light. Or is it because they're really low to the ground so the wind isn't going to catch it underneath? Whereas if something's a bit higher or a bit more upright, it will catch, such as the tent. I don't know, let me know what you think. Like, why did those underpants not blow away? They literally, I think, remained in the same position, and I don't think they were soiled to the ground, no pun intended. Yeah, just trying to think of like comparisons of other items that are present, because if you knew that there was other objects around which were just as light as the likes of the tent, you could put the argument across and say, well, wind couldn't have caused it then. If something like that remains, then so should that. You get me? What else has changed over time? Skulls. I'm sure Jeff Clark said that there was a skull or some kind of bone resting upon a rock just in front of the supposed covered M cave. And that makes you wonder, because I remember Jeff Clark saying when he went back there, he couldn't find the skull. It was missing. So what are we talking about? Oh, person keeps going around collecting stuff. I don't know. But that wasn't found. And I'm sure like skull bone will definitely weigh more than a tent for sure. And skulls and bones don't just blow around. But would it have been a human? I don't know. Because if it's in a key area where people walk through, could be the case. But depending on the height of it, it could just well be an animal that jumped up, grabbed it, and ran off with it. Yeah, could make more sense. Could you say an animal caused the tent to disappear? Went up to it, tugged at it, pulled it, and then ran off with it? Maybe, but I don't know what type of animal and why it would need it. Would it be for a nest, some kind of den? You know, like how birds pick stuff out the grass or ground and take it with them to build a nest. Could an animal have done that for some reason? Maybe. Could it have been a homeless person? I doubt that because of the distance. It's too far out. There are certain things you can rule out due to the distance, how desolate it is most of the time, and the danger of the environment too. So yeah, thanks for watching. That's it for now. See you next one. Goodbye.